I'm a 32-year-old woman with a knack for noticing patterns, like the way people squirm out of blame or how chaos unfurls when egos swell past reason. It's a strange little gift, I suppose, forged in the crucible of a small Midwestern town where I grew up watching life play out in predictable loops. My parents ran a diner called May's Place, a greasy spoon with chipped formica tables and a jukebox that hadn't worked since the 90s. I was their shadow, bussing tables by age 10, learning the rhythm of human behavior. I could spot a complainer before they even sat down, like Old Man Grady, who'd storm out over a runny egg every Tuesday. His scowl brewing the second he sipped his burnt coffee. I'd call it to my mom under my breath. "He's gone in 5 minutes." And sure enough, he'd huff out, leaving a nickel tip like it was a favor. That skill, reading the cracks before they split wide open, stuck with me. Carried me through college where I studied hospitality management, dreaming of running a sleek, efficient hotel someday, a place where everything clicked like clockwork. Instead, I'm assistant manager at the Grand Elm Hotel, a faded husk of a building in downtown Chicago that's one stiff breeze from caving in, and I'm stuck here, 3 years deep, because I'm too damn good at holding it together. I didn't mean to stay this long. I took the job fresh out of school, thinking it'd be a quick resume boost, a stepping stone to something shinier. But the Grand Elm's got claws. It's a once charming spot, built in the 20s with arched windows and a lobby chandelier that flickers like it's gasping for air. Now it's all peeling wallpaper, creaky floorboards, and an HVAC system that groans like a dying beast. I work 60-hour weeks, sometimes more, wrestling with leaky pipes, a booking software so old it crashes if you sneeze, and guests who think I'm their personal punching bag. The staff leans on me. Cooks, housekeepers, the night clerk with the lazy eye. They trust me to keep the ship afloat. The guests tolerate me, mostly, unless they're drunk or demanding a refund for the Wi-Fi's latest tantrum. I've built a system, a fragile web of duct tape and grit, to keep this place limping along. It's not the dream I scribbled in my college notebooks, not even close, but it's mine, or it was, until Derek barged in and smashed it to pieces. Derek's the general manager, a 50-something jackass with a fake tan that screams midlife crisis and a permanent smirk that says he's better than everyone in the room. He's been here 6 months, strutting around in tailored suits that cost more than my rent, barking orders he never follows up on. He's the kind of entitled prick who thinks he's a visionary because his dad handed him a real estate empire. Connections he name drops like they're gold stars, usually mid-sentence while you're trying to explain why the boiler's down again. I've dealt with his type before, the arrogant blowhards who coast on charm and nepotism, but Derek's a special kind of nightmare. He's got this delusional swagger, like he's the star of some reality show nobody signed up for, and we're just background noise. He'll cut you off mid-report to monologue about his genius ideas, like the time he insisted on lavender-scented hand towels in the lobby because luxury's in the details, then pitched a fit when the budget didn't stretch and blamed me for not selling it right. Or there's his habit of leaving voicemails at 2 a.m., half drunk, rambling about game-changing plans, like hosting a rooftop rave in a building with a roof that leaks when it drizzles, then forgetting he ever called. His first week, he rearranged the lobby furniture for feng shui vibes, lost 2 chairs to a delivery truck because he didn't measure the door, and shrugged it off with a grin, saying, "Details are for peasants." I knew the Grand Elm was a fixer-upper when I signed on. The ad practically screamed desperate, low pay, long hours, must handle stress. But I figured I could tame it. I've got a knack for turning chaos into order, always have. Back at the diner, I'd reorganize the stockroom when Dad's inventory got sloppy, stacking cans so tight you could set a clock by them. Here, I've done the same. Rerouted the cleaning schedules, sweet-talked vendors into extensions, kept the staff from mutiny. It's exhausting, but there's a pulse to it I can't quit. I need the paycheck, sure. Rent doesn't pay itself, but it's more than that. I care about this crumbling heap, its tired bones, its loyal crew, the way it clings to its quirky charm despite the odds. The night porter still polishes the brass railings nobody notices. The breakfast cook sneaks extra bacon to regulars. It's a mess, but it's ours. Derek doesn't get that. He doesn't care about the Grand Elm's soul, its history, its people. To him, it's a toy, a sandbox to play king in, and he's been swinging a wrecking ball since day one. Only now he's added a matchbook to his toolkit. I should have seen the scale of it sooner. Guys like Derek don't just stumble, they bulldoze, and he's got a flair for it. I didn't clock fast enough. I took the job thinking I could outmaneuver the dysfunction, keep my head down, build something stable. But he's not just incompetent. He's reckless, making choices so boneheaded they'd embarrass a toddler hyped on sugar, like leaving half-baked schemes in our laps and waltzing off to lunch with his investor pals, probably bragging about how he's revolutionizing hospitality while sipping overpriced wine. I didn't bargain for this. For a boss who'd treat the hotel like his personal experiment, consequences be damned. I'm here because I'm stubborn, because I refuse to let it fall apart on my watch, but mostly because I'm dumb enough to think I can outlast him. I should have known better. Patterns don't lie, and his was screaming disaster from the jump, lavender towels, late-night voicemails, and all. I just didn't expect he'd burn it all down in one stupid, selfish move. It was one of those muggy Tuesday afternoons where the Grand Elm felt like a pressure cooker on the brink, the air conditioning rattling like a junkyard clunker, the lobby steeped in the sour reek of damp carpet and burnt coffee grounds that clung to everything. I was rooted behind the front desk, neck-deep in a disaster Derek had lobbed my way, a tangled mess of overbooked reservations from his latest stroke of genius. He'd promised a local convention group 20 extra rooms we didn't have, probably over a third martini with some slick investor he was desperate to dazzle, and now I was stuck stitching the chaos back together before it unraveled completely. It wasn't just numbers on a screen. It was a human avalanche crashing over me. A gray-haired guy in a rumpled suit had stormed up earlier, red-faced and bellowing for 15 minutes because his guaranteed king suite with a view had morphed into a double queen facing the clanging streetcar line. Thanks, Derek. I'd weathered his tirade, his spittle-flecked demands for a manager who was conveniently AWOL, and finally talked him down with a free breakfast voucher and a promise to look into it, my jaw throbbing from the fake smile I'd glued on. Then there was the woman with the yappy terrier, shrill on the phone, threatening a 1-star review because her pet-friendly room was already taken, another of Derek's phantom bookings. I'd comped her a late checkout and a dog treat, my voice steady even as my pulse jackhammered, and kept pushing forward. The phone wouldn't quit. Another call, a guy barking about a missing conference discount, his tone sharp enough to cut glass. This is unacceptable. I booked 3 months ago, he snapped, and I swallowed the urge to snap back. Tell that to the idiot who overpromised. Instead, I soothed him with, "We're sorting it now, sir. I'll get you that rate," and scribbled a note to fudge it later. It was relentless, furious voices, an inbox pinging with complaints I didn't earn, a parade of guests I had to placate with half-truths and forced calm. It was brutal, soul-crushing work, the kind that makes you wonder why you ever gave a damn, but I had it under control. My fingers flew across the keyboard, my brain spinning solutions like a high-stakes game of Tetris, shift this booking, comp that stay, dodge the next Yelp bomb. I'm wired for this, picking up the shards of someone else's stupidity, forging order from chaos, and I wasn't about to let Derek's idiocy sink us. Defiance simmered beneath my calm, a quiet vow to outlast this crap, because someone had to hold the line. That's when Derek swaggered in, tie dangling like he'd quit hours ago, coffee sloshing in his hand, smirk dialed to insufferable. He looked like he'd just strolled out of a 3-hour lunch, probably regaling some investor with tales of his revolutionary hotel empire while I drowned in his fallout. He leaned over the counter, too close, his cologne a suffocating blast of fake pine and desperation, and sneered, "Stop whining and trust me, sweetheart. Those losers'll take whatever we shove at him." My jaw locked so tight I thought my teeth might shatter, heat surging up my neck like a wildfire ready to devour me whole. Sweetheart? The word was a slap, soaked in that smug, patronizing ooze that made me want to ram my fist through his perfect, whitened teeth and watch his precious smirk collapse into a bloody heap. I pictured it, coffee splattering across his overpriced suit, his fake tan paling as he staggered back, stunned, and the thought burned bright, a jagged jolt of satisfaction that almost made me smile. But I kept typing, eyes drilling into the screen, clinging to my playbook. Stay cool, stay sharp, let the moron exhaust himself. He didn't stop. He rapped the desk with his knuckles, coffee splashing across my notes, brown streaks bleeding into hours of meticulous fixes, and taunted, "Chill out. I've got a killer plan to fix this dump. You'll be kissing my shoes later, mark my words." The arrogance in his voice, that greasy promise of gratitude I'd sooner choke on than give, snapped something raw inside me. Kissing his shoes? I wanted to hurl the keyboard at his smug face, watch it crack his veneers, and scream that his plans were why I was babysitting a convention meltdown, Why I'd spent my morning groveling to a guy who'd called me incompetent over a room he'd never booked right. Why I'd begged a dog lady not to tank our rating over his lies. My fingers froze mid-keystroke, defiance roaring in my chest like a caged beast clawing to break free. I could have unloaded right then, told him his lavender towel, rooftop rave brain farts were the reason I was drowning in complaints while he played king. But I swallowed it. Barely. My throat tight with the effort. My glare hit the ruined papers, and I hissed under my breath, "Keep dreaming, you prick," as he strutted off, oblivious or indifferent, leaving me to scrape his spill off the desk with a fistful of napkins, my hands trembling with a rage I could taste. An hour later, I smelled smoke. Not the faint whiff of a guest sneaking a cigarette in the stairwell. This was thick, acrid, clawing at my throat, stinging my eyes like a chemical spill had erupted. My stomach plummeted, a cold dread sinking in. I vaulted from the desk, heart slamming against my ribs, and tracked it through the halls, past staff peering out of doorways with wide, confused eyes, their whispers trailing me like ghosts. I burst into the kitchen, and the sight hit me like a punch. Flames roared up the walls, spitting and snapping like a cornered dragon unleashed, grease popping on the stove in violent, sizzling bursts that echoed like gunfire. Black smoke billowed so dense it swallowed the ceiling, the heat slamming into me like a physical blow, singeing my skin, turning the air into a toxic soup that burned my lungs with every ragged breath. 3 cooks stood frozen, clutching spatulas like pitiful shields, faces pale as the fire danced closer, licking at the edges of their stations, the shelves, the goddamn ceiling tiles. I didn't think. I acted. I snatched the extinguisher off the wall, ripped the pin with a shaky yank, and unleashed it, white foam blasting everywhere, coating the counters, the floor, my arms, my face. My muscles screamed as I wrestled the blaze, swinging the nozzle like a weapon, sweat pouring into my eyes, stinging through the haze, my shirt sticking to me like a second skin. The flames fought back, snarling, leaping, but I kept spraying, pushing until they shrank to charred embers, a smoldering wreck hissing in defeat, the air thick with the stench of burnt oil and melted plastic. The kitchen was a battlefield, counters blackened to ash, plastic melted into grotesque, dripping puddles, smoke so thick it blurred the edges of reality, curling toward the vents like a living thing. My chest heaved, my throat raw, my arms shaking as I scanned the carnage, trying to breathe through the haze. Then I saw it. A note taped to the counter, Derek's lazy, careless scrawl. New menu test, Derek. My hand shook as I gripped it, rage boiling over like the grease that had sparked this hell, a white-hot fury that made my vision swim. His killer plan crashed into me like a freight train. He decided, without a whisper to me, the one actually running this place, to overhaul the restaurant overnight, probably to flex for some investor he'd hyped up over cocktails at a bar I'd never afford. He'd ordered the cooks to deep fry some half-assed experimental dish, something with truffle oil and God knows what. A pretentious mess he'd dreamed up to sound impressive, ignored every fire code we had, and walked out, leaving them clueless, untrained, defenseless against the inferno he'd seeded. Later, he'd shrug and say, "I trust my team," like that wiped the soot off his hands. But this was my team, underpaid, overstretched, loyal despite his endless crap, and he'd lit the match under them, left them to burn while he sipped wine somewhere smug and safe. I stood there, smudging my arms, sweat and foam streaking my shirt, watching smoke coil toward the sprinklers, my head spinning with the weight of it. One stray ember, one missed spark, and the whole damn place could have gone up, the Grand Elm. My patched-together empire, every ounce of grit I'd poured into keeping it alive, every late night, every forced apology for his screw-ups. His voice echoed in my skull, "You'll be kissing my shoes later," and I wanted to roar, to hunt him down and shove that note down his throat until he gagged on it. Kissing his shoes? For this? I'd been reasonable, busting my ass to fix his overbooking fiasco, soothing guests who'd cursed me out for his lies, begging strangers not to bury us online, and he'd repaid me by nearly torching everything I'd built. Defiance burned hotter than the fire. I'd make him choke on this. I swore it. But frustration clawed deeper, a bitter, gnawing ache that wouldn't let go. How does this clown keep screwing up, keep strutting away untouched, while I'm left coughing up his soot, fighting tooth and nail to save what he doesn't even value? The kitchen was still smoldering, a thick haze of smoke choking the air as I stood there, chest heaving, the extinguisher limp in my hand like a fallen soldier. Soot coated my arms, my shirt clung to me with a mix of sweat and foam, and the air tasted like charred grease and shattered trust. The cooks shuffled behind me, shell-shocked, their spatulas dangling uselessly against the wreckage Derek had unleashed. I was still catching my breath, my lungs raw from the fight, when he stormed back in, red-faced and roaring, his suit pristine against the chaos he'd birthed. He didn't even glance at the blackened counters or the melted ruin. He zeroed in on me, jabbing a finger an inch from my nose, his voice a venomous snarl. "You're supposed to handle this crap. That's why I keep you around. So what the hell happened, huh? You're a disgrace, should have been on top of this." My fists balled so tight my nails drew blood, rage surging up my spine like a live wire ready to ignite. The kitchen was trashed, the fire alarm shrieking through the halls, guests spilling out of rooms in a panicked flood. And he thought this was my fault? I'd just put out his damn fire, saved his sorry ass from a total collapse, and he had the nerve to call me a disgrace? I was shaking, not from fear but from a fury so raw it blurred my vision, my tongue burning to tell him to choke on his own arrogance. Before I could let it rip, Maria stepped in. She's the head housekeeper, a 40-year-old spitfire with sharp eyes and sharper words, the kind of woman who'd stare down a hurricane and make it flinch. We'd bonded over late-night shifts, swapping war stories about entitled guests and Derek's relentless bullshit. She was my anchor in this sinking ship, and she'd hit her breaking point. She planted herself between us, arms crossed, her small frame a fortress of steel, and glared up at him. "You don't get to pin this on her," she said, her voice slicing through the alarm's wail, steady despite the tremor in her clenched fists. "You set this place on fire with your dumbass stunt, and I'm done. I quit if you don't own this right now. We all walk, you hear me?" Derek blinked, thrown off, then sneered, his lip curling like a snake's. "Stay in your lane, Maria. This is above your pay grade, and you're not going anywhere. You're too pathetic to leave." Her eyes narrowed to slits, her jaw tightening, and she took a step closer, voice dropping to a dangerous hiss. "Try me, you bastard." She didn't budge, unyielding, a wildfire in human form. The sprinklers kicked on then, a freezing deluge drenching us all, water pooling around our ankles as the lobby erupted into chaos. Guests screaming, a kid sobbing over a soaked teddy bear, an old man slipping and cursing as his wife yanked him up, suitcases splashing through the flood, the fire department's sirens howling closer. Derek scoffed, muttering, "Ungrateful losers, every damn one of you," and stomped off toward his office, leaving us soaked and seething. Maria and I didn't pause. She rallied the staff, barking orders to grab mops, herd guests to the side entrance, shoving a broom into Carlos's hands with a fierce "move it," while I waded through the lobby, dodging waterlogged carpets and shouting over the pandemonium to calm the herd. "We've got it under control, folks. Just head this way." I lied, my voice hoarse, my defiance the only thing keeping my legs from buckling. The hotel was a war zone, smoke staining the walls, water ruining the floors, a woman slipping in the mess and shrieking as her husband hauled her up, a businessman yelling into his phone about suing this dump, the front desk phone ringing off the hook with cancellations I couldn't reach. We were barely holding it together when Derek pulled his next outrage. He called an emergency staff meeting an hour later, still dry in his office while we dripped, and announced he was docking everyone's pay to cover the damages. "This was a team failure," he said, leaning back in his chair, smirking like a dictator on a throne. "You all let me down. Pathetic, really. So we're splitting the cost. Fair's fair. Frankly, you should thank me for the lesson in accountability. It's more than you deserve." I saw red, my vision tunneling, my pulse pounding in my ears. The hotel was ruined, half the rooms reeking of smoke, the lobby a swamp, bookings evaporating, and he was robbing us, preaching gratitude like some twisted sermon. Maria's face hardened beside me, her fists clenched white-knuckled, and the room buzzed with stunned murmurs from the staff, cooks, clerks, cleaners, all of us soaked, exhausted, betrayed. That was it. I couldn't stomach it, his smug face, his delusional entitlement, his refusal to own the disaster he'd ignited. I marched to his office, water squelching in my shoes, and slammed the door so hard the frame rattled, the sound echoing down the hall like a gunshot. "You're a coward and a fraud," I said, my voice shaking with fury, loud enough for the staff outside to hear every syllable. "You nearly burned this place to the ground, endangered everyone, guests, staff, all of us, and now you're stealing from us to fix your screw-up? You're a pathetic leech, Derek, a spineless little worm, and I'm reporting you to corporate and the fire marshal." I'll make damn sure everyone from the board to the news knows what you've done." He laughed, a sharp, grating bark that fueled my fire, and leaned forward, eyes glinting with malice. "Good luck proving it, sweetheart. You've got nothing on me, and you'll crash and burn trying. You're out of your league, you whiny little nobody." His words were a taunt, a venomous stare, and I wanted to flip his desk, smash that smirk into the wall, watch his smug world crumble, but I held it together, barely, my hands trembling with the urge. Maria grabbed my arm as I turned to leave, her grip fierce, her voice a low growl. "We're with you, screw him. We'll all walk if we have to. Let's burn his ass instead." The staff nodded behind her, Carlos the cook, Jen the clerk, a quiet army forming, their eyes hard with resolve, and I felt a flicker of something, hope, maybe, or just shared rage. Derek doubled down, shouting after me, "You'll regret this. All of you, watch your backs, you're done here." But I didn't flinch. I slammed the door again on my way out, the bang a war cry, a promise that echoed through the sodden halls. I was done playing his game. I stormed out of Derek's office, the echo of the slammed door ricocheting through the sodden halls like a gunshot, water dripping from my clothes and cold, heavy drops that splattered onto the ruined carpet. My hand shook, not from the chill seeping into my bones, but from a fury that refused to die, a defiance that flared brighter with every sodden step. I couldn't wait, couldn't let him sit there smirking in his dry little fortress while the rest of us choked on the ashes of his chaos. I yanked my phone from my pocket, the screen fogging under my wet, trembling fingers, and planted myself in the middle of the wrecked lobby, smoke-stained walls looming like accusing shadows, water pooling in murky swirls around my feet. The distant wail of fire truck sirens fading into the city's hum. I filed the report right then, no hesitation, typing furiously with a vengeance that felt like a war cry, every keystroke a dagger aimed at his smug, entitled face. I detailed his reckless fire stunt, citing the crumpled menu note I'd shoved in my pocket, "New menu test, Derek," as ironclad proof of his stupidity and the paydocking outrage, listing every boneheaded move I could dredge up. The overbookings that had me groveling to guests, the lavender towels he demanded like a wannabe dictator, the 2 a.m. voicemails slurring about rooftop raves that never happened. My fingers slipped on the glass, smearing the screen with water and soot, but I didn't stop. Corporate had to know, the fire marshal too. I hit send, defiance surging through me like a jolt of raw, electric power, a middle finger to his taunts, even as doubt gnawed at the edges of my resolve like a relentless, gnashing rat. I slumped against the front desk, the phone still warm in my hand, and stared at the carnage stretching out before me. The sprinklers had finally shut off, leaving a dripping, eerie silence, but the damage was carved deep. Half the rooms reeked of smoke, their curtains singed and sagging, the lobby a swamp with floating debris, receipts, a kid-soaked teddy bear. A lone high heel abandoned in the flood. The booking system blinked with a relentless stream of cancellations, each red flash a gut punch I couldn't face. Maria and the staff lingered nearby, mopping up what they could with slow, weary swipes, their eyes flicking to me with a mix of exhaustion and quiet solidarity, Carlos with his broom, Jen wiping the desk, their faces etched with the same betrayal I felt. I'd taken the swing, reported the bastard to anyone who might listen, but the outcome? That was a murky fog I couldn't pierce, a shadow I couldn't outrun. Corporate's investigating now, some faceless suit probably skimming my email between coffee breaks, jotting notes in a sterile office far from this sodden hell. The fire marshal's poking around too, asking clipped questions about codes and negligence, scribbling on a clipboard while the kitchen cools into a charred tomb. But I'm not naive. Derek's got connections, a silver tongue dripping with lies, and his daddy's real estate empire to prop him up like a gilded, untouchable shield. He'll spin it, charm them, maybe dredge up some fabricated dirt to flip the blame. I could see it already, him in a boardroom, smirking, saying, "She's just a disgruntled employee, overreacting, unstable, probably unhinged." While I'm stuck here, the assistant manager with a soaked shirt, a grudge, and a paper trail that might not hold up against his greased palms and polished excuses. Will it stick? I don't know, and that uncertainty twists in my gut like a rusty knife, sharp and unyielding, carving deeper with every breath. His voice kept clawing at my skull. "Good luck proving it, sweetheart." And I hated how it stuck, how it might be true, how it fueled the sickening, nauseating thought that he'd slither free again. Guys like him always do, don't they? They torch everything in sight, call it brilliance, and waltz away unscathed while the rest of us sweep up the ashes with brooms and bitterness. our hands blistered from the effort. I'm sick of his games, sick of the way he struts through life leaving wreckage in his wake like some twisted badge of honor, sick of how the system bends over backwards for pricks like him, while I'm left clawing for justice with soggy evidence and a Wi-Fi signal that keeps dropping like a cruel joke. They'll probably bury it, some HR drone filing my report under employee complaints to rot in a drawer, or the fire marshal shrugging it off with a lazy, no clear intent excuse. A slap on Derek's wrist at best, maybe a fine he'll pay with daddy's spare change. I could picture him gloating, leaning back in his chair, untouched, maybe even promoted for handling a crisis with that oily charm, while I'm stuck explaining to Maria and the crew why their checks are still short, why we're still drowning in his fallout, why we're the ones paying for his fire. The frustration chewed at me, a bitter taste I couldn't spit out, a weight pressing down until I wanted to scream at the unfairness of it all, to claw at the walls until my nails bled. But I wasn't done, not by a damn shot. I'd fought too hard, patched this place together through too many sleepless nights, too many groveling apologies for his lies, to let him win without a scar. Even if they let him off, I'd make him bleed for it. I'd bury him yet, one way or another, with every shred of grit I had left, every ounce of defiance I could muster. I straightened up, shoving the phone in my pocket, and caught Maria's eye across the lobby. She nodded, a silent, "We're still in this." Her mop paused mid-swipe, her jaw set with the same fire I felt. Carlos leaned on his broom, wiping sweat from his brow, and Jen gave a small, fierce nod from behind the desk. They were with me, a ragged crew forged in this mess. The report was out there, a live wire sparking in the dark, and I'd keep pushing. More emails, phone calls. Hell, I'd camp outside corporate's glass tower with a megaphone and a stack of flyers if it came to that, shouting until my voice gave out. I'd drag every detail into the light. The menu note, the untrained cooks he'd abandoned to the flames, the ignored codes that could have killed someone, could have killed us all, the staff he'd screwed over with his greedy little pay cut, the guests who'd fled in terror. Maybe it wouldn't topple him. His kind have 9 lives and a golden parachute stitched with favors. But I'd make damn sure he didn't sleep easy, that he'd wake up every night sweating, wondering when the next blow would land. I wasn't just some assistant manager he could brush off with a smirk. I was the one who'd held this place together while he played with matches, the one who'd stared down his fire and refused to blink, the one who'd kept swinging when the odds were stacked against me. Defiance burned hotter than the doubt, a steel core forged in every battle I'd fought here, and it wouldn't bend. Not now, not ever, not while my heart still pounded with this rage. I was done bowing, done eating his crap, done letting him think he owned us, owned me. Whatever happens, whether they nail him to the wall or he slips free again like the snake he is, I fought back, and that's a victory he can't steal, a truth he can't bury. I'd keep swinging, keep clawing, keep fighting with every breath I've got, because guys like Derek don't get to ruin everything and walk away clean. Not on my watch. Not while I've still got a pulse and a will to see him fall. Looking back, Derek's behavior isn't just infuriating. It's pathetic, a sad, clownish spectacle stuffed into a $500 suit that doesn't hide the gaping void where a conscience should be. He's the kind of guy who thinks rules are for suckers, who bulldozes people because he's got the cash and connections to dodge the fallout. A walking caricature of entitlement with a smirk plastered on permanent like a cheap billboard. I've seen his type before. Guests demanding free nights because a light flickered in their room, my dad's diner regulars stiffing us on tips with a shrug and a grunt. But Derek's on another planet, orbiting his own delusions. This wasn't just arrogance. It was reckless, selfish, a tantrum with a body count that could have been, and he didn't even blink, didn't flinch at the thought of flames swallowing the Grand Elm whole. He didn't care about this place, its creaky charm I'd fought tooth and nail to preserve, or the staff busting their asses to keep it breathing through the cracks. He didn't give a damn about the guests who ran out screaming, clutching soaked bags in the dark, their vacations ruined by his big plan. It was all about his ego, his need to play king in a kingdom he didn't build, didn't earn, didn't deserve. I saw him laughing once, leaning against his office door while we mopped up the lobby's flood, sipping coffee like it was a private comedy show. Our sweat, our panic, our desperation, just entertainment for his bloated, grotesque self-image. That moment sticks, a splinter under my skin, festering every time I think of him. I'm defiant because I have to be. Someone's got to call out this crap, to stand up when he tries to crush us under his polished loafers and leave us broken in the dirt. I'll tear his throne down myself if it comes to it, brick by brick, until he's got nothing left to lord over, until he's choking on the dust of his own collapse. But I'm frustrated too, bone deep, a gnawing ache that's settled into my marrow and won't let go, because guys like him always seem to slither away, leaving us to mop up the mess, literal and otherwise, while they climb higher on the backs they've snapped without a second thought. I've poured years of my life into fixing chaos, wasted nights and days holding this place together, stitching it up with grit and sleepless hours. Years of my sanity, my youth, my dreams, poured into a hotel that's now a smoking ruin because of him. For what? To watch him torch it all and walk off with a promotion, a pat on the back, maybe a bonus for his innovation? It's a pattern I've tracked since the diner, since old man Grady's tantrums and my parents' quiet shrugs. People who think they're above consequences, who wreck and run, and the world just nods along, hands them a bigger stage. Derek's not subtle about it. He's a wrecking ball who thinks he's a visionary, swinging wild while we duck the debris, and the system lets him roll on, greased by money, a name I can't match, and a smirk that says he's untouchable. That's what eats at me most, the unfairness of it. The way he gets to play God while we're stuck with the fallout. The way my knack for spotting patterns can't stop him, only predict the next inevitable crash. I've spent my life reading the signs. Grady's scowl before he stormed out. The guest who'd complain before opening their mouth. The way the grand elm groaned under neglect. And I saw Derek coming a mile off. I knew he'd break something, but I didn't think he'd burn it all down. Didn't think he'd cost me this much. Every late night I stayed, every shift I covered, every time I smoothed over his messes with a forced smile. It feels like sand slipping through my fingers now, wasted on a fight I might not win. The frustration is a weight, a bitter taste I can't spit out, a scream clawing at my throat when I think of how he'll probably laugh this off too. How he'll keep climbing while we're left picking up the pieces, our hands raw from the effort. I've given too much to this place, my energy, my pride, my hope, and he's turned it into a punchline, a cautionary tale he'll never have to read. But I'll keep fighting, because those patterns don't lie, and his is cracking. I can see the fissures, the way his bravado falters when he's cornered, the way his laugh hitches when no one claps. He's not invincible, just loud, a hollow shell shouting to drown out the truth, and I've got the scars to prove I'm still here. Years of grit, of defiance forged in every mess I've fixed, every disaster I've turned into order. They're stronger than his flimsy throne, tougher than his cheap bravado, and they'll outlast him. He's a fool if he thinks I'll quit now, if he thinks a fire and a few taunts will break me. I've been turning chaos into something solid since I was a kid stacking cans in my dad's stockroom. And I'll be damned if I let him think he's won, if I let him think he can burn us down and strut away clean. I'll outlast him, outfight him, make him choke on every smug word he's ever thrown my way, every sweetheart, every good luck, until he's gagging on the wreckage he made. This isn't over. Not while I've got the will to shove his ruin back in his face. Not while I've got the strength to stand here and say no more. I'll keep going, because I've seen his kind fall before, and I'll see it again. Derek's not a king. He's a fraud with a matchstick crown, and I'll watch it burn. What would you do? Forgive and fund these bastards, or stand your ground? Share your thoughts. Let's make them sweat. Make them face the reckoning they've dodged too long. Rant over, your move.